it makes no sense to expel talented young people who, for all intents and purposes, are Americans.
Now, that was the president on Friday announcing a major change in immigration enforcement, a mini version of the DREAM Act, something we've talked about quite a bit on this show. And obviously, he's dealing with the fact that Congress pretty much is a lame duck on everything nowadays. The president said the U.S. will no longer deport the children of illegal immigrants if, and there's important caveats, they enter the country before they turn 16 and they're younger than 30 years of age, but only if they also meet the following criteria. If they've been in the U.S. 5 years or longer, if they don't have any criminal histories, and if they're either high school grads or earn their GEDs, or if they've served in the U.S. military. Now, best estimate, policy changes will impact about 800,000 young people. All right, Andrew, let me first get the politics out of the way. I've heard this being called nakedly political. Fair charge?
Well, I think there's certainly an element of politics to it. You're 4.5 months away from the general election. The president has certainly been going off and trying to throw cookies at the different groups within his base. But I think there's also an opportunity that you can do the right thing for the wrong reasons, if you want to call that the wrong reason. I certainly agree with the DREAM Act. I think a lot of people in the country do. But you know, sure, was politics behind this? Absolutely. He's the president of the United States. He's involved in a little bit of politics.
Where's the distinction with him and Romney here? Because I know one of Romney's big surrogates is Senator Rubio from Florida, who was going to offer a version of the DREAM Act. Now he's not. Where are the two guys different?
Well, that's what we're waiting to see. Romney, and we're going to get to some of this in a bit, but Romney had a chance to put down his position on this when he was on Sunday morning television yesterday. Didn't. And so we're sort of waiting to find out exactly where Romney's going to stand on this. We know that Marco Rubio is pulling back his proposal that was pretty much a congressional version of this. It's going to be interesting to see where the Republican Party shakes out.
Dom, how much does this help out the president?
As Andrew argued, and I concur, I agree with it, it will help him with his base. Now, the Latino community was already for the majority in terms of on Obama's side. This may help him in terms of turnout, and in this close election, it could be a deciding factor of who wins the White House.
What's really interesting about this is the decision to go it alone. And there, it is smart on a political basis, of dubious legality, but you know, it's an interesting lawyer's argument to have. But it may be the portent of things to come. Suppose he decides to do this on environmental stuff, on economic policy.
Just go completely around the Congress. Right?
And of dubious legality. All of a sudden, the consequence for the Republicans are they have to take positions instead of just criticizing him. So what happened to Romney the president takes a position and Romney stammers for 3.5 days. And the stammering is in and of itself a political problem for Romney beyond the merits of his position.
You know, beyond the politics of this, you know, don't we think that the principle of it, you know, Michael Long, the head of the New York Conservative Party, was going to join us tonight. He couldn't make it. But what I would have loved to debate is who thinks a kid, and we all know families here in one way, shape, or another, kids brought here, 2 or 3-year-old, they got no voice in when they're coming or where they're going to. And they're more American than anything else. They can't even speak the tongue of the country that they came from. And now you're not going to count the kid as an American citizen.
But
to me,
there's a counter-argument. This is an argument of law. And that is to say, we have ways for allowing people who are not born citizens to become citizens. Those ways are good, bad, and different. You can argue with them, but we have laws. Once you're here, you can say, well, make the law different from me. That's not a trivial...
I get that, Richard, but if you're a kid who's 2, use that as an example, right? It's different than somebody who's 20.
But the argument is then change the law. But what Obama did was take your advice. And he moved beyond the legalisms into a place where the American people can understand exactly that argument, and he forced the other guys to take a position which they don't want to do.
But it's interesting, one of the bullet points that you mentioned in terms of who can qualify for this is if they have no criminal history. A lot of people would say, you know what, they have a criminal history, they entered the country illegally.
And not only that, you know, we're in New York, so we may feel this is a good idea, but in states like, I would imagine, Texas, but certainly Arizona, they feel that their hospital systems, Richard, you mentioned the 2-year-old, they feel that their emergency rooms are so overburdened with illegal aliens, or whatever term you want to use, that they can't afford one more person.
Well, Dom, take a look at what Romney had to say. He was asked about the same question over the weekend, And he didn't really say where he was on the issue like Andrew referenced, but he did take the president on. Let's take a look.
He should have worked on this years ago. If he felt seriously about this, he should have taken action when he had a Democrat House and Senate, but he didn't. He saves these sort of things until 4.5 months before the general election.
All right. May have a point here in terms of political timing.
No, that's amazing. What Mr. Romney said in that interview is amazing. How do you not take a position? And that's the good way. But yet you're criticizing the guy that did. And he did take a position. Remember during the primary when Mr. Romney was all the way to the right? And now you're criticizing the president that's trying to correct.
Well, the flip side of what Romney said is that anything that the president finds important, he should be doing on the first day of his administration, which makes for a very long day and a really bad way of running an administration. It's not practical. It's not possible. The problem is, a lot of people aren't going to think that through or think to that depth. A lot of people, that argument will register that this is just a political gimmick designed to placate his base.
Let's look at the political consequences. The math is this race is going to be close. Dominic's been saying that. I always thought the president was going to have a cushion at the end. I'm not so sure now. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But for me, he had to do something if he was going to energize certain bases. How he came out for gay marriage, certainly the progressive wing of his party, at least on that social issue, he gave them what they wanted. For the Latino electorate, time will tell here, but it certainly invigorated them. They weren't going to go Romney, but they might have stayed home. We'll see here, but I think it goes some way to at least energizing that electorate.
It's not just that. It's the Republican dynamic, which is define Obama as the other, be against everything he does, is coming to an end. They're going to have to make their own positions, their own solutions clear, and they really don't have many. So
But
I
to
think
this
there was
point,
a strategic virtue in this beyond the tactical virtue for energizing the
Well,
base.
last week I was in a different part of the country, and as much as I thought, hey, it's going to be close, maybe Dom's right, it'll be a toss-up, it'll be close, but at the end, Obama wins. I don't know. I don't know if I was in Vegas how I'd bet now, and I got a different perspective after the past week.